Well, I'm delighted to be joined now by the wonderful Alan Howard from the IET. He's their design and manufacturing lead. Alan, a very, very warm welcome to Manufacturing and Materials Week here at Cranfield.
Thank you very much indeed. Wonderful to be here.
Well, of course, we are meeting under very different circumstances to usual. Thanks very much for agreeing to participate in an interview that will be shared with all of those who attend this virtual week. Good that you can be with us.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely fantastic that Cranfield has been able to allow the voice of the national manufacturing debate and indeed this week's activities to be heard, because these are very difficult times, I know, and it's important that we, I think, look to the future and share ideas and get together.
Well, as you say, they're difficult times, but they're times when the manufacturing community, the engineers of this country, have a real role to play. I mean, I think we have all learned a great deal from the first phase of COVID as we go into a second wave. Any reflections from you? What have you taken from that first experience of a pandemic?
Yeah, I mean, it has been phenomenal in the sense that, and certainly mixed emotions, I think, some businesses doing extremely well, having not really stopped. In fact, in many cases, up in production, food and pharma. Perhaps more difficult for companies in aerospace and automotive, where we know there have been obviously some challenges, but full credit to all those businesses who managed to pivot their operations at short notice and turn to other manufacturers to help out what was obviously a very difficult and still is situation.
One of the things that I'm deeply conscious of, having been so closely involved with the Ventilator Challenge UK consortium, was the way that manufacturers really stepped up. They changed what they usually did to do what the nation needed them to do in a moment of true crisis. Has that meant different things for the IET? Has it moved you into looking at different activities?
Yes, certainly. I mean, first and foremost, just to sort of make sense of what was happening. We were getting calls from all sectors of our membership, really, in terms of what was happening, and focused quite a lot, really, on just providing them with sort of practical day-to-day help with the special COVID-19 section on the IET website. But I think coming out of it, really, I think what's good is the ability for people to see a way forward, perhaps to realize that perhaps just getting back to the way we were in March or October last year really isn't necessarily going to be enough. And that far from just building back or building back better, whatever the phrase is, we actually have a great opportunity to leap forward with UK manufacturing.
And what do we need to do to make that big leap forward? Because I would very much agree with you, going back to the way we used to do things isn't necessarily what's needed right now or in our future.
Yeah, I mean, we have to take stock of what's happened, and I'm afraid that is going to inhibit our ability in some cases to do the right things. But I do think, there are some big challenges for us to really bite the bullet on, really. And I have to say, Cranfield is quite correct. I think decarbonisation is probably one of the biggest things facing the manufacturing sector. We know the why, we know the what, we're probably less clear on the how, and that's part of the purpose of the IET's involvement with our manufacturing members. We have to reduce the impact of our operations on the environment, full stop. We have now a piece of legislation that makes it necessary for all businesses to look to the future and to actually reduce their impacts on the local communities and on the environment generally. We know what we probably need to do. I think part of decarbonisation is also inextricably linked with so many other challenges that we faced in UK manufacturing. Productivity is perhaps something I should mention. How is that connected to decarbonisation? Well, very closely, in the sense that I think we have previously concentrated our focus on output per worker per hour, which in some cases may be 10, 20% of total costs. Yet we've not really addressed that non-labor resource efficiency, which could be as much as 40 to 50% of base costs. So I think companies looking at that side of the equation as they come out of this terrible situation has got to be a huge opportunity.
It's very important to identify the opportunities, but actually stepping forward to seize them isn't always that easy, particularly if you're a small business concerned about protecting your people and basically bringing the income in through the door. So how are businesses best placed to step up to some of the challenges that you've identified? Let's start with decarbonisation. Where should businesses be focusing at the moment?
I think those 40 to 50% of costs expenditures are certainly where I think many of our members are focused. So reducing energy consumption, reducing water, reducing raw materials coming into the factory has to be a number one. There's not a great deal of capital investment that will be needed to address those things. I think various businesses will address this in different ways. We certainly favour the idea of making sure that businesses have a champion that can work at all sections and levels of the company, both on the shop floor, up in the offices, and also in the boardroom as well. So I think it's about getting companies really to try and think about what they're doing, to really make a commitment to making a change and to embedding that change across the business.
Alan, you make a really good point there about the need for businesses, no matter whether they're large or small, to exert some downward pressure on their resource consumption, in particular energy use. I know that there are organisations like the High Value Manufacturing Catapult out there that can hold them by the hand and help them to use some of the new technologies that might be able to improve their energy use. Are there other sources of help out there for businesses?
We're starting to see a whole range of information on the internet in particular. And I think what's really heartening to see is some of the fantastic case studies that have been posted. We've done our bit within the IET and have recently published a 6-page document, very easy read, called Sustainable Manufacturing, Progressing the Next Steps, which I would commend to anybody who's thinking about embracing this particular activity. I think the other thing that perhaps is we're starting to see, certainly through contacts we've made within the IET, is a strengthening really of interest in the academic world, particularly at both colleges and universities. So I think there is expertise out there. There are people that you can call on to help with this. But ultimately, it's about having a champion within the business to take this forward.
That can be a real challenge for many businesses, Alan. I think you and I have both been party to discussions where we've talked about the long tail of British businesses. There are many businesses out there that are absolutely great at harnessing the power of new technologies. But we also know that there is a very, very, very large segment of businesses that actually feels nervous about doing so. And so we see fairly slow adoption of some of the technologies that could really help businesses to raise their game. What do we need to do to try and encourage businesses to embrace the power of new technology?
I think much of the commitment and thinking about embracing technology is out there. I think people do want to do it. I think they're quite intimidated and scared by it a little bit. Perhaps they don't know where to start. And it isn't always easy, perhaps, for them to see where to go for advice. Of course, catapult centres are a fantastic resource if you've got one on your doorstep. But many people, I think, struggle to understand where to get help from. So I think being able to have someone that you can turn to is actually vital. We could do with more integrators out there who can help companies make sense of the technologies. In the first instance, it's vital really for companies to understand, what their pain is, and how they might, what are the top challenges that they need to really address. And digital technologies are there as a solution. They're part of the armory of things that we can bring to bear to actually address those pain points in the business. And going back to our conversation earlier about decarbonisation, I would be doing these things at the same time, making sure that the processes that are going on within the factory are as efficient as possible, in the first place, using sensors and data to measure what's happening in the factory.
Alan, you talk about sensors and data, and that will make a great deal of sense to many, many manufacturers. But you and I both know that change doesn't begin with technology, it begins with people. Any reflections on how we help our manufacturers to make sure that they have got the people there who can help them master some of these new challenges?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, getting support isn't easy. But there is support at hand. The catapults have a fantastic service and offer expertise and information, not so much just on the technologies, but obviously what people are trying to do within their businesses to improve their processes, to improve their products, to improve customer service. And digital can go a long way in helping with that. There are organizations, obviously, that are set up. And I refer, of course, to our national sort of service of integrators, of which we need more. There's no doubt about it, just to simply address the scale of transformation that's needed. But also at academia as well. I mentioned, colleges and universities being a good source of support on decarbonisation. I think there are also opportunities to help really when it comes to embracing new technologies. It doesn't have to be an expensive exercise. There are simple things that can be quick wins within the business, helping you to understand what's happening, what's going on inside the factory. Basic measurements in terms of metrics that will help you to really identify and quantify your pain and be able to address them in a sort of sound programmed sort of way.
And I think that that's a really good message to end on, actually. Embracing the new doesn't have to be difficult. There are simple solutions out there. And I know that the IET, your organisation, is helping manufacturers and actually the research base to have an informed dialogue and a sense of what they could do to change the way that they operate. As we wind up this interview, Alan, any reflections that you would like to share on how we navigate what could be a bumpy road ahead?
Yeah, so we at the IET, we're working to engineer a better world, and in particular within manufacturing, I think that's about celebrating what a fantastic sector we have in the UK, remembering really what our strengths are as a sector and the contribution that we make and the high quality jobs that we provide. I think many of the things that we've spoken about today provide the key to how we move forward, not only bounce back, but as I say, leap forward really. And that I think is about, really galvanizing ourselves to embrace the opportunities that decarbonisation can provide in providing green jobs, well-paid jobs, highly skilled jobs, the jobs of tomorrow. We are going to see a transformation in the manufacturing sector as we move in the longer term, perhaps away from manufacture based on metals and minerals as we head towards maybe bio even. And that we completely see a revolution in terms of smart factories, from smart factories to bureaus that are multiple and in all sorts of strange places on our high streets as well as on our industrial estates. So I think there's a great opportunity for UK manufacturing, and we can be leaders in taking some of these ideas and our people forward.
We can be leaders. If that isn't an inspiration, I don't know what is. Alan, thank you very, very much for giving up your time. Really, really good to talk with you. We have the most amazing sector to champion. Let's make sure that we keep on doing that. Alan Howard, thank you very much indeed.
Many thanks, Rosa.